With Tears of the Kingdom right around the corner, I figured it would be a fun idea to take some of the Zelda art that Vinny here has made for the channel and do some interesting techniques to try and turn it into something musical. And the first way I did that is through this website made by the artist Direct that lets you turn PNGs into WAV files and vice versa. And I'm going to be honest, it doesn't sound amazing with what we input. The files themselves just mostly sound like this. It changes slightly depending on stuff like the brightness of the image and all that. But that's kind of the general gist of most of it. And like, there's some interesting bits of sound in there. It's just difficult to make musical. So the second thing I did was open up Harmor. That's not Harmor. You can choose to have an image affect frequency or gain or both. Gain is the more applicable of the two. We'll get into what exactly that does once we get to those sounds. But to start off with, I figured it would be easiest to use Edison. And I think I deleted all my instances of Edison in this project, but I would use Edison to isolate just like a little snippet of a sound like this, something like that, and then import it into Serum as a wavetable. And so I basically start off with this bass sound here.
I like the little yeah, they're dancing.
Yeah. So I'm going to just disable all the effects here. Without all of that and without all of this, the wave table itself just sounds like... Oh yeah, and without this filter. Yeah. Not anything all that crazy. This is pretty much just the same like wave cycles repeated over and over again, with like some slight variation over time. It kind of gives it like a pulse width modulation type effect. And then I just copied it over, did a little bit of FM, and then threw some sync on here. And the sync makes it do that. So it basically like duplicates the waveform over and over again. Which technically, if you line it up like this, it just makes it one octave higher. But if you do like halfway like this, then it sounds kind of cool. Then I threw this phaser filtery thing on here, just to kind of accentuate some vowely movement. Then I threw flanger on. That's a pretty subtle effect. Same with the chorus here. Threw on a filter just to kind of give it a little more peak movement in that vowely range. Threw on a delay as pretty much just a static comb filter type thing. If we turn up the feedback on here like all the way, it's like... So, yeah, it lets me do stuff like that. The phaser here is pretty much doing the same thing as the phaser filter here. Then there's OTT compression, which really brings out some of that crunchiness. We get a little bit of that. This is a technique I use a lot where you take the X shaper on the distortion. You make one basically all the way silent, and then you make the other one whatever you want. I just give it a little bit of saturation. And then you can use an LFO to control it basically as like a volume. And so I've got the rate of that LFO attached to a macro here that's slowly being automated. So you get some fun rhythms and stuff, and then just an EQ to cut out some sub-range low end because it was getting a little messy. I copy-pasted the thing over and then basically got rid of everything on it except the rate of this X-Shaper thing, so that way they can be the same rate. The sub just has this plugin that emulates Ableton's erosion effect. Basically just gives it like a nice noisy texture, and then just emphasizing some of that noise and cutting out a bunch of the mids, because the mids is where our previous bass lives, and so the whole thing together is like... And then on here, I've got a patcher with two vocodexes that does, one of them does some formant shifting upwards and the other does formant shifting downwards. Hi, Estelle.
She jumped up on my lap and was like, meow, meow, meow.
Whack. So that now sounds like... gives it some of that like kind of chunky, almost watery feel. Just a little bit of an EQ here. Disperser, which slightly delays like certain frequency ranges to give it kind of a, instead of being all like coming in at once, it gives it kind of a ploinky effect almost, which can sound really cool at higher rhythms.
Ooh.
And then we've got a frequency shifter here, which is just being automated pretty much on and off. The whole like flow of this drop here is you get your root note, and then you get the half step under that. And so I added the frequency shifter to kind of accentuate that, because it's a little difficult to tell when it's bass that's that low. And so the frequency shifter just accentuates that. Cutting out sub mostly because the frequency shifter would move things into sub range when it was active. And then using some soothe just to really clean up the sound. So without it, and then with it, it's like really subtle, but it gets rid of a bunch of garbage. I also played around with the idea of using this delta mode, which basically takes just the garbage and then outputs it. And so that would have sounded like, which is like, it's kind of cool, but not really what I'm going for. So that's kind of the main bass that leads things. Then we've got these jumpy chords here. So I added this Zelda art as a frequency mapper. And so what that does is basically it looks at like a vertical slice of the image, and then it can manipulate the harmonics of the sound individually, and it uses the brightness of like, so like this would be like your high end of your sound, and then going on it would be lower and lower. And so the brighter it is, it pitch bends the individual harmonics upwards or downwards. And that can be like very tricky to work with, just because then it becomes hard to play a consistent note. So here's what I ended up with for this.
It just does a section.
Yeah, so it starts over every time it plays a new note.
Okay.
I think I can set it to not do that, but
You like what it's doing.
yeah. So I got it to play an E, kind of. What it's actually doing is playing an A sharp. Except it's not, because it pitch bends the harmonic so it sounds like an E anyways.
Okay.
And then it kind of slides down. And so most of my harmonic movement in this track was dictated by this synth, because I couldn't get it to play any other notes that made like any musical sense. So I just did the whole half step thing. And then I copy pasted that synth over. Let's go to the image here. Once again, just frequency mapping it. This one is less wavy.
It's kind of fuzzy.
Yeah, so the fuzziness is an effect I added after the fact. That's mostly this, again, Ableton Erosion plugin and a little bit of M Saturator putting in work. I really wanted it to sound like a super saw. I couldn't quite get it there, but that was the closest I could get, basically. It was kind of like a weird, like FME stab type thing. That in context sounds like this, or looks like this in the spectrum. So it's like, it's still got the same pitch bendiness to it. Then I've got these two lead pluck things here. Go away, piano roll. This is a like granular thing. So I took a chunk of the PNG to wave sound, and then threw it into granular synth, and then just really shortened it up, played around with some stuff until I got something that sounded kind of usable. Through some disperser, some soothe, some transient shaper to make it extra stabby. This EQ, which is doing some really subtle things, and then just some reverb and delay. And so that sounds like...
It's very metal.
Yeah. And then this stretched out pluck, I did basically the same thing. Just different effects on it. So it's got M wave folder, which is a weird distortion thing. Once again, transient shaper to make it really stabby. This EQ that's just cutting out low end, an ensemble, and then just a delay on it, but with no reverb. And then I played the two of them together, so it sounds like one instrument. So it sounds really like harsh and stabby, but most of these notes are being played. Well, not most of them. A lot of them are being played at the same time as the kick drum, which means they're getting ducked in the side chain. So I wanted it to sound extra punchy, so that way when it wasn't playing under the kick drum, it was really noticeable.
I see.
So that with the drums here sounds like... Yeah. The drums aren't anything special. They're just some drum samples I pulled in. I didn't synthesize those for this project because I was already kind of having enough of this by that point. And then I went and made some what I call fill basses, which is basically just like basses that play like once or twice as just like individual like cool moments. And those I used a variety of things for. I once again made a wavetable out of the PNG to wave stuff and manipulated it that way. Yeah, a lot of phaser putting in work there. Some tube distortion, a static comb filter on there, and then threw in this EQ curve that kind of gives it a guitar ampy sound. This fill bass 2 is literally just copy pasted, but I messed around with some of the effects on it. Yep. This one is different. I added just a sine wave harmonic on this particular wavetable frame.
Look at the green line. Can you make him big again? Like, oh, he looks like an upside down Batman.
Kinda, yeah.
Ooh.
So that one's got some downsampling on it, which gives it that kind of like broken, like metallic-y feel. And then the rest of it is just adding like comb filters onto it. And then cutting out some low end with this filter here. Fill bass 4 here. Once again, back to Harmer. I had an image here. What happened to it?
Is it still making the sound it needs to?
It is, which is weird. Like, you can see it's got the background.
Oh, yeah, there's the Zelda image.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really funny.
So the main thing making that work is Isotope Trash 2, which is just a really weird distortion plugin that does some really unpredictable stuff. And then that's running into a thick band vocoder and Serum Effects just to make it a little more in line with the other basses we had going. This fill bass 5 here, once again, just using the image as gain here instead of frequency. So that way when I play a note, the note doesn't change, it just changes like how it sounds.
Ooh, you can see.
You can see it just a little bit. The phaser's cutting out some pretty harsh notches in there. That's running through a different trash preset. And then the same vocoder Serum Effects thing. I think I moved this filter around a little bit. Once again, copied this effects chain for fill bass 6. Should be pretty similar. The main thing that differentiates all of these is which trash preset I chose, because it is just that ridiculously strong. And then this fill bass 7 here, I decided to try frequency mapping again, which...
Oh, that looks cool.
Yeah, a lot of that is the vibrato. So like if I turn that down, you can see it's like pitch bending individual harmonics, which is super, super cool. But that's kind of meant to be this long drawn out bass that slowly pitch bends up at the end of the phrase. The only things I've got going on there is some faturator and once again erosion, and then just a Serum Effects version of OTT on there. And so those on their own sound like... Yeah. So I made sure there were no hi-hats playing during the first beat, and it's just kick drum. That way it gives those fill basses a chance to shine. And then I also ducked the more stabby of the chords out of the way for that. And then when those fill basses aren't playing, our main bass from earlier is playing. So that's a whole drop that it's only 8 bars long. So it's not like super intense or anything, but I figured I was kind of running out of ideas on what to do with these sounds exactly. So I was like, okay, let's wrap it up here. Yeah, this is what it sounds like all put together. Yeah.
It loops very nicely.
Yes. Totally feasible to just like copy paste that and then maybe add like a little like build up B section during this bar and then go into like a B drop. Like that's totally a thing you would hear in a finished track.
Cool.
So yeah, that was my attempt to turn some Zelda fan art into music using just the art itself, which was incredibly challenging, as it turns out. I thought it was going to be way easier than that. Yeah, if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel because we post art, music, fusion stuff all the time here. And yeah, just thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.